everyone. My name is Heather Briggs and I am the pattern designer for My So Quilty Life, and today I wanted to show you how to make the Rolling Petals flower quilt block. To follow along with this tutorial today, you will need the Rolling Petals pattern that is available on my website at mysoquiltylife.com. It is available in a PDF format and paper format. To make this quilt, you will need a jelly roll. I went ahead and broke open my jelly roll, and you will need additional yardage for the leaves and the background and the cornerstones. For this tutorial, I will be showing you how to make one of these cute flower blocks in the Rolling Petals pattern. It finishes at 10 inches squared. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Your cutting instructions for the block can be found on page 1 of your Rolling Petals pattern. The cutting instructions have instructions for cutting one block or all the blocks for the entire quilt. I like to set up my patterns this way, so if you wanted to make something out of just one block, you didn't have to do the math. To complete this block, you will need 4 fabric A, 4 fabric B, 1 fabric C. In the pattern, I have fabric C as the flower center in the background fabric. For this tutorial, I am going to use a yellow fabric so it looks more like a flower. You will also need 12 fabric D and 8 fabric E. Your outside of your flower fabric, you will need 4 fabric F, 4 fabric G, and 8 fabric H. For the inside part of the flower, the middle part, the coordinating part, you will need 4 fabric I, 4 fabric J, and for the leaves, you will need 4 fabric K. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on step number 1. For step number 1, you need fabric C, your center, and you're going to need fabric J squares. So you can push all these others to the side. What we're going to do here first is we're going to go ahead and draw our line, a diagonal line on the back of fabric J. So what I'm going to go ahead and do first, after I have drawn my diagonal line, is I'm going to line up fabric J squares on the corner of fabric C squares. And then I'm going to sew on the diagonal line and press. Now I'm going to do that for each of the corners. I'm going to go do that and I'll be right back. This is the diagonal seam tape I was referring to by Cluck Cluck Sew. I just put this on my machine and I follow the black line so I know that I am stitching at 1/4 inch. I love this stuff. You can pick this up at almost any of your quilt shops. You can pick this up online anywhere, but this stuff is a lifesaver because in most of my patterns, I have you draw a line and I don't actually draw the line anymore because I use this. It is wonderful. Okay, I just got back from the sewing machine and I went ahead and I stitched fabric J squares on each corner of fabric C square. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this 1/4 inch away from the seams. Okay, so now I'm just going to line my ruler up. I love this Creative Grids ruler because there's a dashed line. I just line that up on my seam and I go ahead and cut. And you're going to do this for all 4. Okay, so now I have trimmed that excess off. I'm now going to press open according to the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and press open and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my seams open like this, like the pattern says. I'm now going to just trim it up because it's kind of, you can tell it needs a little bit of trimming. So I'm going to do that really quick. Okay. I trimmed off those excess threads. So now I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to work on step 2. Okay, for step 2, you're going to need fabric I and your fabric H squares. Now you're going to go ahead and draw a diagonal line on the back of your fabric H squares. Now if you have diagonal seam tape or any kind of Seam So Easy guide, you don't have to do this part, but go ahead and draw a diagonal line if you don't. So for this step, we're just taking 1 fabric I and 2 fabric H squares, and we're going to put them each on the corner like this, and we're going to sew on the diagonal line. I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and sewn fabric H, both fabric H's to my fabric I rectangle. I'm now going to trim off a 1/4 inch away from the seam, and then I'm going to press. Okay, I went ahead and pressed towards fabric B. In the pattern it says to press open, but I found that it's okay if you want to press it towards the one side. It actually is just fine. Now I'm going to trim just the excess fray off of this and the threads. Okay, I went ahead and trimmed up this. So now you're going to go ahead and make 4 of these middle petal units. So I'm going to go make the other 3 and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and finished each of those middle petal units. So now I have 4 of those units and 1 center unit. You can kind of see how it's going, how it's looking, super cute. So now we're going to move on to step 3. And for step 3, we will need our fabric G and our fabric D squares. So our fabric G is actually a rectangle, not a square, and we will only need 8 of the fabric D squares right now. So we can go ahead and lay 4 off to the side. And for this one, we're going to do the same thing we just did with our middle unit, and we're going to create the outer petal unit. So again, you're going to draw your diagonal line on the back of fabric D, and you're going to sew along the diagonal line on the corners of fabric G. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and make all 4 of my units. Okay, I just got back from the machine and I went ahead and stitched on the diagonal line that we drew. So now you have 4 of these outer petal units. Now I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away from the seam, and I'm going to press towards my fabric D. Now in the pattern it does say press open, but again you could press towards fabric D, and that is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to go do that and I'll be right back. Okay, I just finished pressing and trimming my units to the measurement in the pattern. So now I have 4 of my outer petal units completed. So these petal units, move this over here, will go up here above our middle petal units like this. So it's coming along. Now we're going to do step 4, and we're going to do the corner petal units. So for step 4, we're going to move this to the side. I like to keep it so I can see it nicely right there. So for step 4, we're going to be taking our fabric F squares and the remaining of our fabric D squares, which are 4 of them, and we're going to be drawing a diagonal line on fabric D and placing 1 fabric D square at the top left corner of fabric F square. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my fabric D's to my fabric F's, and I will be right back. Okay, I just got done sewing fabric D to fabric F, and now I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away from that seam on all 4 of them and press them, and then I will trim them and be right back. So something I found to be helpful after making a few of these blocks in the pattern is that nesting your seams when you're putting this block together is essential where the seams meet up. So the only places really where the seams meet up are this leaf unit and this corner petal unit. So we just made the corner petal unit, and what we want to make sure we do, instead of pressing open, if we press towards fabric F, it will nest perfectly, because when we make the leaf units, we're actually going to be pressing towards fabric E, the outside here. And so they nest perfectly when you put them together. That is the only place in this pattern where your seams have to nest or have to line up. So I went ahead, instead of pressing open on this one, go ahead and press towards fabric F like this. So now that I've done those, I'm going to stick those over here while I make the leaf units. Our block is coming together nicely. Okay, now we're going to make the leaf units. So on step 5, you're going to be using 4 fabric K, and you're going to be using 8 of your fabric E. Now you're going to go ahead and draw your diagonal line on your fabric E. And for this one, we're going to be putting it on the top left corner and bottom right corner. And then we're going to be sewing on the diagonal lines according to the diagram in the pattern. So I'm going to do that for all 4 of these, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and sewn on my diagonal lines, on the diagonal lines of fabric E. Now I have my 4 leaf units. I'm going to go ahead and trim a 1/4 inch away from the seam, and then I'm going to press these towards fabric E. Remember how I said these need to be pressed towards fabric E so they nest with the other units. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to trim them up, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have now pressed my fabric towards fabric E, and now I have trimmed, and I have 4 of these leaf units. So these will go like this, and you need to be very careful how you place them. I know that it can be tricky. To place them correctly. Like that. Okay, now we're gonna move on to step 6, and we're gonna start making some units. This is exciting. We're gonna be going and putting these blocks together. I cannot wait. This is one of my favorite parts, is when I have all my little pieces done, and I can now go ahead and put the block together. Okay, for step 6, we're gonna be taking 1 leaf unit, 1 of our corner petal units. This is where they're gonna nest up. And then 1 fabric A, and we're going to be stitching them together. So first what we're going to do is we're going to stitch our corner petal to our leaf unit. And I just want to show you, you see how those nest right perfectly. Those little pieces, you see that seam? Perfect, right there. So I'm going to sew along that, my 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to press it and come back. Okay, I went and sewed the leaf unit to the corner petal unit, and as you can see, they nested so wonderfully. Look how that looks. So beautiful. Right there, that nested perfectly because I had pressed the seams in opposite directions. That works out great. So the next part of this step is we're going to be assembling our fabric A on top here to our unit. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and stitched fabric A to the top of the leaf and corner unit. So, and then I went ahead and also pressed towards fabric A. In the pattern it says to press open, but you can press towards fabric A. I'm now going to square this up according to my instructions, and I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3, and I'll be right back. Okay, I just finished my corner units from the instructions on step 6. Now I have 4 of these units. I'm now going to move on to step 7, and we're going to make the outer petal units. So I will set these aside, and you're going to need these plus your fabric B. So what we're going to do here is we're going to assemble fabric B to our outer petal units, and we're going to assemble and sew at the top, and then we're going to press towards fabric B, and then we're going to assemble the middle petal unit to the outer petal unit and press. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and made this middle unit by attaching these 2 together and 1 of our fabric B's together, and then I pressed up like this, so towards fabric B and towards our outer petal unit, and I went ahead and trimmed. So now I'm going to go ahead and make 4 of those, and then we are going to be ready to start constructing the entire block. Okay, I went ahead and finished step 7, so now I have 4 middle units, and I've trimmed those, all that excess threads off of those. So now I have all of my units, and I'm ready to assemble the block. So we're going to be moving on to step 8. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lay out the block right here. So I'm going to start by putting my middle units, center units together. And just be very careful how you arrange this because these do rotate like this. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and assemble this middle unit to this corner unit, the center unit to the middle unit, and again, the middle unit to the corner unit. And we're gonna assemble with our 1/4" seam. Okay, I'm gonna assemble those and I will be right back. So I went ahead and assembled those pieces. And before I pressed, I just wanted to lay these out. They look great. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually gonna press in here. So I'm gonna press towards this unit here like this. And I'm gonna press out towards this unit. You can already see that it's kind of like the path to least resistance. So if I were to press in here, it'd probably be a lot more lumpy and bumpy, and we don't want that. But here, look, it's already laying that way. So here we're just going to press this way on this one, and we're gonna press out this one, and again in this one. So that when we put all the rows together, our seams will nest perfectly. Okay, so I went ahead and pressed my pieces. See how they lay? They lay pretty flat here, which is great. That's what you want. So now I'm gonna go ahead and assemble this side to this side. So I will do that and I will come right back. Okay, I just finished sewing those together and now I'm gonna press them. Again, I just wanted to tell you we're pressing in towards the inside here, out here, in here, so that when we sew each of these rows together, these seams will nest right here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll be ready to pin the block and put it together. Okay, I just went and pressed the rest of the seams. So here's our block so far. Now what we're going to do is we're going to assemble this middle piece to this piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to pin at our seams. So we nested these seams together, so if you kind of push on them, they kind of lock towards each other. That's kind of a test I like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pin at all my intersections, especially at these two. We want these two to line up. If they don't line up, you're going to be able to notice it when you finish the block. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I like my little pen, magnetic pen thing. My little pen holder. I love this thing. It collects all my pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lock, feel that seam is locked, and I'm going to pin. I pin like this. I know other people pin differently, but this is how I pin. I'm just going to stick a little pin in here, right there. And since this block is smaller, it doesn't move as much. Normally when you have a bigger block, it will move. So I actually don't have to put a pin at every edge and every seam, but I do put it at all the seams that need to nest. So I just locked that seam there. Now I'm going to pin that. Then I'll put probably a pin here in the middle, just why not, right? And then line these two up and stick a pin there. So now I'm going to sew a 1/4" seam right here, and I will be right back. Okay. Now I had sewed along that seam. I'm now going to press it open. So I'm going to press it open at my iron, and I'll be right back and we will assemble the top to this piece. Okay, I went ahead and pressed this open. That's due because there's a lot of seams meeting up here and I want it to be able to lay flat. So next we're going to assemble the top piece, and again we're going to pin with nesting our seams here. So I will do that, and then I will sew our 1/4" seam right here, and then I'll be right back. So I thought I would stop and just show you something. If you struggle with getting your seams to nest or seams to line up, something that I do, because when you start sewing down here, sometimes the fabric will start to pull down a little bit, and it can create a mess at your seams so they don't line up. So something that I like to do is, and you can see it here, is I will only sew at my seams and then I'll sew down. So I started sewing with this seam first, if you can see the stitch. I stopped, I backstitched and stopped, and then I started sewing at this seam. This is so that if there is any fabric, let's say any fabric in between, I can then pull it and stretch just a little in order to get that to line up. Then I don't have to worry about my seams. So what I did is I sewed that seam, so that's good, and then I sewed this seam, and I just sewed it all the way down since there was no other seam that I needed to match up. So now I'm just going to go back and I'm going to stitch where I didn't so far. I know that seems kind of silly, but I just want to make sure that these line up, because if they don't, you're going to notice that. And before I started doing that, I would have to rip out stitches all the time because nothing was lining up. It wasn't until I started sewing at the intersecting seams that my accuracy got a lot better. So if you struggle with that, give this a try, this little tip. I learned it from Kimberly Jolly at Fat Quarter Shop, and I believe she learned it from Aditya Sitar of Laundry Basket Quilts, and I will say that this has helped me tremendously, so thank you, Kimberly. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish sewing. I know that seems silly, there might be more bulk than there needs to be, but I would rather it be more accurate here than have bulk, so we're good. Okay, so I just sewed the rest of that, and you can't even tell. I mean, that was a stitch and those were stitches, like you can't even tell. I just sewed, I sewed from the top to here and I stopped. So now I'm going to just go ahead and press that open, but you can see the seams nest really nicely right there. You see that? Right there and right here. So I'm happy with that. So now I'm just going to press that open and I'll be right back. Okay, I just sewed and finished my rolling petals block. I pressed those seams open. Man, this is a little messy. And now I'm going to just trim off this excess according to the pattern, and then I will be done. Okay, so now we are finished with the block. You can either make more of these and turn them into something cute, or you can continue with the pattern. There are 3 different sizes. There's a wall hanging that finishes at 38 by 38, a crib that finishes at 48 by 48, and a throw 58 by 58. And the throw size, you will use 25 blocks. For the crib size, you're going to use 16 blocks, and for the wall hanging, you will use 9. This is such a fun pattern, and it's so much fun to use a jelly roll and create something other than, you know, just a simple jelly roll pattern. This pattern is super cute with these flowers, and I hope you enjoy making these blocks. I now have 2, and I am putting mine into a quilt, and I'm doing a sew a jelly roll day using my 1930s reproduction. So this is going to be a 1930s style inspired rolling petals, and I hope that you're able to join me because this is going to be a lot of fun. So this is my mock-up of my rolling petals. I'm doing the crib size, and then I'm going to be rounding my corners. So I'm going to be making a bunch of different of these blocks, and I'm so excited. Please like, share, and comment on my video and share with a friend. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing more of these block tutorials using my patterns, so stay tuned. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Bye, guys.